So Dr. Ralph May is with us this morning. We have a very serious topic to discuss with him in just a moment or so, but we also have some fun with Dr. May this morning as well. You and the group were here recently talking about the oldies dance you have coming up a week from today.
Week from today, St. Thomas More University Parish annual oldies dance at Cherry Run Lodge. It'll be next Friday, 7 to 10.
Yeah. And you actually brought with you that day, when you were here, a couple of tickets that we have the opportunity to give away now here
Yes, sir.
on Indiana in the Morning.
Yes, sir. We have 2 tickets to the dance. If somebody wants to call in and get them, that way they can have them and come to the dance next week and have a good time.
You can call 479-1160 or 349-WCCS right now, and we'll set you up with these 2 tickets. So 2 tickets to the oldies dance next Friday, 7 to 10 at the Cherry Run Lodge in Homer City to benefit the St. Thomas More University Parish and the wonderful mission work that they do. 479-1160, 349-WCCS. You can go dancing.
All righty.
There you go. Let's hope we get a call here or 2.
Let's hope so. It's a great opportunity. Great fun night.
Yeah, I sprung it on them, so I don't know that.
They might not get it right away.
Yeah. All right, so I want to get to this topic because, of course, the ceremonies will be, the actual interment ceremony for Private Walco will be next Wednesday.
Yes.
And we actually began this process and set up this conversation before we knew any of this.
Right. Yeah.
But this evening, the remains will come to town. They'll land in Pittsburgh this afternoon and be brought here to Indiana. And we're asking folks to line up along the streets. I want to talk about people who go off to war and leave behind family members. And those family members often have a burden that is only understandable to those family members about their loved ones who are off serving in a very, very dangerous situation. And for some, the closure never comes.
This is really complicated for these families. When there is no closure, there is no final answer, when your loved one doesn't come home and you don't really know what happened to them. I mean, in times of war, there's so much confusion and chaos, the fog of war, it's called, where things happen and they are beyond anyone's control, and people go missing. And only recently have we had the ability to identify the remains of individuals who may have been lost. And so this has opened up a whole other area where people have never really gotten closure for their missing family members, soldiers who have gone off and given their lives to serve this country. And the families have been left with an open question. It's not uncommon for these families for years to think, well, maybe they're still alive somewhere. Maybe somehow something happened to them. They have amnesia, they forgot, or they were hurt. And so there's always this open question, even though part of them says, no, I know they're not coming home, that leaves this kind of openness of not ever being really sure and getting closure for my loved one. So when this opportunity presents itself that someone can finally come home, which is going to happen with Private Walco, this is a very somber but yet important relief for the family members that are still here. Now, many of the family members, Sergeant Walco, were part of his family, are gone. They're deceased themselves. So these are the children, the grandchildren, the uncles, the aunts that are still here. And it's an interesting thing because they've been told stories. You know, they've seen pictures, and they suspect that he died in service, but they've never known for sure. But now they know for sure. And it is a relief, but also a sad moment, because it does provide that sense of closure. But Private Walco is coming home, and that's ultimately the point, I think.
Yeah. And especially for those who actually knew him. He still has a sister
Right.
Who grew up with him.
Right.
And for those families, and we're talking specifically about Private Walco here, but we could be talking about somebody who went to Afghanistan or Iraq or any and Mogadishu, all of these different areas where there have been military actions involving United States military service members. The idea of them being in this dangerous situation and you're at home and there's nothing you can do, it sort of reminds me of somebody whose family members involved in an accident. The person who was not hurt, who's the husband, the wife, whatever, as they go into the emergency room, there's someone helping them. Who's there to help you? There's something going on inside of you, and you need to find a way that you can handle that sort of pressure, that sort of uncertainty.
Well, you've got this uncertainty, and then you've got the issue when things do not clear up for a long period of time, and you there's a process of grief that we go through when we lose someone. And when you have, you're not sure that you've lost someone. You think you have, but you haven't. It's a whole different kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's the acute phase of it that you're talking about, where you're worried about the person. You don't know if they're coming back, and so you're under that anxiety. But then when they don't come back, but you don't know why they're not coming back, that creates this intense kind of sadness and fear, but also hope that maybe they will come back. I mean, we're talking about military veterans at this point, but think of Nancy Guthrie right now.
Yeah.
Think of the fact that her mom's been missing now for like 120 days, and they suspect that she's deceased. They don't know. They don't know she's still being held. So they're not allowed to fully grieve a loss because they don't know if they have the loss or not, or they're still waiting. And so this sense of waiting is what kind of holds people back. Over time, though, as time passes, people begin to grieve, but that never really gets completed because you don't really know for sure.
All right. So how do we help those people? I'm assuming that family members are going to be the most important part, but support groups, clergy, any number of folks could step in and be a helper for somebody.
The most important thing people can do to help, and anyone can be supportive, is to not rush the process, to hear people out, give them the opportunity to talk about their experiences, their reactions, almost for them to teach the listener, to teach the helper about what they're going through. Mm-hmm. Grieving is a very important process, and I think well-meaning people try to give you advice. But when you're grieving, what you need is just someone to listen, someone to be supportive, someone to understand what you're going through. That's the most valuable, powerful thing to do. Even for professionals, that's the most important thing we do, is listen, help the person talk about their experience. And you got to keep going back to it and back to it. It comes in waves. It comes in waves, which, sometimes it gets really intense and sometimes it settles down. That's a normal part of any grief process. It comes back in waves. It can be triggered by certain things, anniversary dates, mm-hmm. Recollections, or looking at a picture of the person. So you have to be ready for the fact that it's not a smooth process. You have to allow time to work for you and allow support to get to you. Of course, there's always a complication here, and I have to mention this on Mental Health Month, is that sometimes grief can transform to depression, where the person who might be vulnerable for depression, or the grief might be so intense that it wears them down. Grief is when you're focused on the loss of the loved one. You feel sad. You feel the emptiness. Depression is when the sadness turns on yourself. You start feeling worthless, hopeless, negative about yourself, and suicidal thinking can develop. So depression can develop out of grief, not all the time, not often, but it can. And if depression develops, that needs to be professionally dealt with.
Yeah. It's such a personal thing, and especially when you're dealing with death. Some people look at death as simply the next transition to the
Right.
next stage of life. Others view it as the end. And people deal with death in personal and their own ways. And I'm guessing that trying to guess how to deal with somebody is not only not easy, but not advisable.
No, I think you have to, again, if you're listening to that person and listening to their journey, their story, it will be helpful for you to kind of understand their way of grieving. Because you're right, Todd. Everybody grieves at a different pace, in a different manner. And so you have to honor that and respect that. And people of faith can have intense grief too, even though that you might obviously believe that there's more to life than this and we're going to a better place. That's still hard. You're still missing the person. Mm-hmm. There's still grief. And so you have to allow room for that. And that's important, because allowing the room for the grief allows the person to go through that natural healing process that occurs when we do.
Yeah. All right. So dealing with uncertainty is one thing. Dealing with the grief of the certainty of the loss of a loved one is another thing.
Right.
Always, I think, we really need to find the way that we can be the best help for somebody. And that is a difficult process to do. It's difficult to know.
Well, because we respond from our own sense of loss and grief, right? Our own experiences of death, our own experiences of loss. We tend to respond from that place, mm-hmm. which, if it's similar to what the person's going through, that's good. But it may be very different. So you can't make assumptions of how your loss and grief may be like theirs. It may be very different. So that's why I think the listening, the hearing, the being support, being there, the people that I've worked with through grief have appreciated mostly the people who are just there for them, that they can talk to. And, in the initial stages of the loss of grief, there are a lot of people there, right? But as weeks go on and months go on, people tend to fall away. And so the people that stick with you are the people you tend to remember.
Yeah, yeah. I remember somebody that I was helping through our church who didn't want to talk, didn't want to listen to somebody just spouting, just wanted somebody to sit there.
Right, and that's
and it was perfectly quiet. One person sitting in a chair, the other person sitting at the table, and just knowing that they were there was what they needed.
and that's what people really need the most,
Is to know that you're there.
is to know that you're there.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so there are a lot of people right now who are suffering in that way, who have the uncertainty of whatever it might be, a medical situation, a loved one who is separated from them. We have to just learn to listen.
Learn to listen, be there, support them. Don't try to give them fast words that try to make things better. That often bounces away. Just sit there with them and listen.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't want to hear the phrases, do they?
No, it becomes a platitude after a while. It loses its power. Just be there with them.
Be there with them. Dr. May, thanks so much for visiting with us this morning.
Thanks for having me again, Todd.
He's Dr. Ralph May. All right, so we still have these tickets. We have the tickets for the Oldies Dance. We did not get a call. The Oldies Dance is happening next Friday, May 22nd at the Cherry Run Lodge in Homer City, benefiting the St. Thomas More University Parish. You want to go to this dance, have a good time with DJ Mike and everybody. Just listen into the oldies, dancing around, having a good time. You can give me a call right now, 479-1160, 349-WCCS.